Hello, I'm Chad Tope. This is my health tech project titled Data Security and 23andMe. I'd like to start with an overview of the project. First, we'll be reviewing 23andMe, who they are, what they offer, what the consumer experience looks like, and we'll also cover their availability and accessibility. Um, Next, we'll review data security in the context of healthcare, and then we'll review some vocabulary, which is outlined in our text, and then we'll go over some of what the potential security risks involved with using 23andMe look like, as well as an incident in history. Um, Essentially blending them together, and then as we blend them together, we'll ultimately kind of ponder this question here of, is it worth it? So, who is 23andMe? They were launched in 2006, began offering direct-to-consumer genetic testing in 2007, and as of 2021, they're publicly traded. And this is what their website looks like. You can see they offer some different service packages. All of these services have something in common, which is they test your genetic makeup and provide feedback. So the experience kind of starts with a subscription here, and then you get a sample in the mail. You mail the sample to the lab tests the sample, and then they publish the results on the website 23andMe for your viewing with your subscription. So from what I'm gathering, it seems like you maintain access to the some original information. However, if you cease your subscription, you lose the ability to get that information that's coming out of the new studies and the new services. So there's a little bit of a barrier there. Um, Here, I'd like to just kind of review the appeal surrounding the access of the test. And the first kind of issue that I really discovered stumbling on here was how it's not necessarily an issue that's specific to 23andMe, but it's about how remote diagnostic services in general tend to neglect the social needs of individuals, uh, especially when dealing with kind of potentially life-changing diagnoses. So one example that I'd found that was pretty glaring was involving a woman who was tested very, very high likelihood of having either ovarian or breast cancer in a very short period of time. Um, Essentially, a diagnosis saying that she's, looking at undergoing surgeries to remove, these parts of her body to essentially prevent these cancers from happening. Which, when speaking with doctors afterward, essentially she developed this idea that she should share how contrasting that experience was, kind of getting this information through pretty much like an email versus having this discussion with some trained medical professionals. Um, the upside here, which I like to point out, is that had she not had access to this test, she likely would not have had these conversations with their doctors, or potentially had those tests with their doctors. So um, as much as it's an issue, I say it's kind of some gray area here. But what I found really interesting is that when you go to the medical.23andme.com, they lay out kind of the medical angle of what they're doing. And down at the bottom, it says, within a paragraph, I've kind of pulled it out here, but it says the test is not intended to tell you anything about your current state of health or to be used to make medical decisions, including whether or not you should take a medication, how much of a medication you should take, or determine any treatment. So it kind of seems like they side of the obligation here, as far as what they're saying. However, a big caveat is that just that in a lot of their marketing, it really does kind of feel diagnostic, like a diagnostic service. So, um, that's it seems almost like a legalese way to get out of any kind of medical responsibility, or at least as much as possible through, some kind of pre-contractual agreement. Anyway, addressing the availability of 23andMe, you can, again, it was created in 2006, started doing the remote testing in 2007. And then following that, 2017, they became FDA authorized for testing for diseases and conditions. And basically, you just got to be over 18, and if you've got any dependents, you can sign them up too, which is a little bit weird, I think. To sign your kids up, I guess, and send out their DNA. But if you've got a reason, I guess it's a service like any other. So it's up to the user, the consumer rather. So I just wanted to end this bit here with a quote actually from the FDA commissioner, which was made in 2017 with the approval of these tests, where he kind of pointed out that while there is a significant amount of personal and risk information potentially available from using the tests, that they're not without their own risks. So essentially, he's pointing out that they could provide incorrect or misleading information that could be used to make health choices without considering the advice of a medical professional. So more or less, the fact that people aren't quite qualified to use this information in a medically responsible way, and that they may perhaps take something like a lack of one of these 10 diseases and conditions or whatever, and then uh, take that to mean that they are not at risk for any of these things, which might not be the case and definitely wouldn't be what the test is saying. Um, Going deeper into the accessibility, I just wanted to tackle the money angle of it, just because it really does feel like a tool for the wealthy. I say that, it basically speaking in the sense that the U.S. is kind of a wealthy nation, and so as far as what we're used to for money, it's seems kind of reasonable. However, if you go, anywhere kind of else in the world, you'll find that uh, the underlying structure required to participate in this program is actually kind of significant. You've got to have a mailing address, which is an issue for a lot of people. A device to access the results, or even order the tests, and then of course the maximum feedback comes from this $1,000 for the first year, and then $500 a year following that service for total health, um, which obviously has some all of their the maximum information that you're going to be getting out of this company. So um, the lower end, you can get some health information. You're looking at over $200, um, and again on the higher end, roughly $1,000. So it's kind of a lot of money, that not everybody can really come up with the drop of a hat. So uh, I will say it seems like there's some HSA options or some other flexible options regarding medical spending accounts or whatever, but that's a kind of a gray area, really depending on your state and a whole bunch of other things. So um, didn't really want to go into that too much. So uh, this slide here is pretty much just to point out how kind of creepy this friendly reminder here is. When they're trying to sell it to you, they say, which one will you start with today? And remember, you can always upgrade without having to spit again. Um, Basically saying, remember, we're going to have all this information about you, whether you pay for it or not. So, whether you pay for this test or you pay for this test, their company is going to have all of that data and use all that data to do things for their profit motive, um, and uh, essentially you're going to get locked out of all that extra data they get down at this end, uh, which is just it's really unsettling from a data like an ownership type perspective. Somebody who kind of views that genetic material type stuff as a little bit descriptive of yourself. Anyway, so here I wanted to tackle the Total Health Service text that they've got. They've got a lot of information hidden in their website through links and whatnot. So I just wanted to bring some of it to the surface, um, highlighting kind of what the plus gives you. It gives you access to all this extra stuff. You get biannual blood testing along with the sequencing. But along with that, you actually get access to clinicians with unique genetic knowledge, knowledge-based care. Um, it also says personalized recommendations focused on ongoing disease prevention and early detection. So more or less seeing if what you're at risk for based on your risk profile, providing ongoing prevention. So what the preventative measures are for that, and then essentially early detection through this biannual blood testing mechanism. So it seems like it's actually fairly comprehensive. However, that is a lot of information to be generated on an individual. Definitely a big decision. Clinical interpretation of 100 plus high impact genes associated with 55 plus health conditions that, if detected early, may have effective preventative measures and clinical interventions. So, keyword may. Maybe if we detect it early, there might be preventative stuff, maybe not. Um, and so you'll also receive, again, that blood test with the biomarkers and the dedicated consultations. It seems like here, you've got a little bit more on that consultation bit where you generate risk assessments, providing the next steps, delivering results, and then followed by unlimited messaging with the clinicians, genetics-based training clinicians, whatever that means. So you get unlimited access to these people who are trained in genetic medicine, I guess. So here we kind of switch over now to data security, coming away from looking at that company. And I wanted to just kind of start by listing out all the terms. I'm not going to read through them just because I feel like it's a waste of our time, but each one of these terms plays a really pivotal role in defining security in a data environment. From a lot of the time, you say, that's a violation of privacy, and a violation of privacy it's a security issue, right? So you've got to kind of understand that within security, that word, you've got quite a bit of activities which take place, from safeguards, putting up barriers or protections to protect that information, to verifying the integrity of the information, make sure it's not been compromised or changed or anything, making sure it's available, authentic, and that you could trace who's got access to it. Those are all really important aspects of it. And they all kind of come together to define security as protecting information from unauthorized access to provide confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So to continue, I added a sweet graphic just to spice things up a little bit. But I just wanted to just very briefly kind of tackle this concept of cybersecurity and cybercrime, and how it's kind of the good guys and the bad guys. So you got to think of cybersecurity as the elements which keep your information safe online, and then cybercrime essentially being the bad guys that are attacking this cybersecurity fortress to try and get your data. There's a lot of terms that I found kind of embedded under cybersecurity, using a reference text that I've got here from information systems book here that I'd used in a prior semester for a different class. But here we've got basic kind of terms. You've got either an exploit, somebody that's using a system vulnerability, a known vulnerability to make an attack happen, versus like something like a zero-day attack, which is a undetected vulnerability which is being exploited. Um, typically they call them 0 days because they typically take place on the day that the software becomes public. And once that access is provided, people have a way of finding creative new ways to break things. So um, perpetrators of cybercrime, range from just somebody accidentally doing the wrong thing and deleting the data or deleting the access, or posting it, revealing it, violating the privacy, whatever it may be. And it goes all the way down through, malicious employees. Somebody at your organization may, dislike something you've done, or just for whatever reason feel wronged and feel like they want to, do something against you. Cyber criminals would be somebody who's doing this regularly for profit. They make a living off of it or something. Activists is a bit more political. They're trying to send a message, something like, think of like PETA, people against the ethical, or people for the ethical treatment of animals. Hacking, say like I don't know, a mice facility or something like that. I don't know. And then you've got something which is a lone wolf attacker, an individual just going out either trying to prove themselves or on a mission just to attack somebody. And then all the way to a cyber terrorist, which would be a state-sponsored attack, some kind of think of war. Essentially, is cyber terrorism is it's actually a really big one, believe it or not. Um, Various types of cyber attacks. There's a whole bunch of them. So I'm not going to list them just because again I feel like it's a waste of our time. But the general meaning behind this slide is to kind of bring you into this idea that there is a broad range of people and a broad range of methods used by those people um, to use to come after this data. And then to wrap this up, it's when compared to other data industries, healthcare industry is among the worst affected, which it's really interesting, but it's a lot of it has to do actually with a bit I didn't highlight up top here, where it says the price of a complete record file of a single patient could be hundreds of dollars on the dark web. So, if you think of something like, hacking millions of people, well, that's a lot of hundreds of dollars, right? So the incentive is there, which essentially drives the motive behind these healthcare attacks. In 2018, data breaches reported was 2216 from 65 countries, so this is a global type deal. And of the 2216, the healthcare industry faced 536, implying that the healthcare industry has faced the highest number of breaches among all the industries, which is kind of a an eye-opening thing. Total number of healthcare records that were exposed, stolen, or illegally disclosed in 2019 was 41.2 million in 505 different attacks, or breaches rather. And then the average cost to the organizations of the data breach in 2019 was $3.92 million, while the typical healthcare industry breach costs upwards of $6.5 million. Costs were highest in the USA, which is uh, everything's higher in the USA cost-wise, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And the average cost of data breaching is increasing. It looks like we can see it going up over time, um, and uh, more than that, actually, it's saying that uh, the cost of a breach is not only going up over time for all industries, but specifically it's going up higher for the healthcare industry, which I found to be a pretty interesting statement. So the point being, your data is at risk. There's profit in exposing it, or discovering it, hacking it, whatever it is that they do. If they can get your complete record file, we're looking at hundreds of dollars on the dark web. So that's a lot of money for some people. Um, in the context of healthcare, I just wanted to include this from our class. This was trend number 6, which kind of inspired this project. and they do a quick overview on data security and why it's a priority for healthcare providers, and a growing priority at that. Some of the points which I've already covered definitely speak to that, but just wanted to highlight these kind of big points out of this so we could review them. How first we'll say privacy and security take critical priority in the healthcare industry, according to IBM. Uh, Between March of 21 to 22, 550 organizations experienced a data breach. We already kind of covered that metric, but you can see it's continuing into the 2020s, right? So um, the big element that wasn't measured in the last slide was this HIPAA compliance, and that's actually behind a lot of what the costs that are experienced by these organizations, because it's not cheap to uh, to break the law. So um, not just that, but the ransomware as well. It's just kind of it's a it's a lot of money in healthcare. Um, A healthcare provider intends to utilize an established system for exchanging PHI, or ePHI rather, with patients through third-party software. They must navigate the challenge of obtaining a business associate exception with the vendor, process that can be intricate and cumbersome. And I think that's a really important line there, just because we were taught in our text that a business associate exception is actually pretty heavy language, which extends liability, for maintaining this ePHI uh, over, across, or from the organization to these other outfits that the organization might be working with. Um, Issue being, though, even if they become, a business associate exception, uh, there's no guarantee that they could safeguard that data. So you basically end up with another pathway to your data, um, and so that it ultimately boils down here to this last line, where transmitting this data in structured formats is imperative, and that um, all of these video calls, what it's discussing here is they complicate the process, because there's a whole bunch of different types of calls and whatnot, and depending on the type of call, it's going to change potentially the ePHI data that's attempting to be disseminated over this call. So basically, different methods of communication, or different types of conversations require different methods of communication. Some more secure than others. Um, and I didn't highlight it, but it is kind of important to mention how the facial recognition and these other biometric type measures are kind of changing the game a little bit, as far as um, allowing us to identify individuals based on who they are. So um, kind of getting towards the end, where we blend them together, and we look at the data security of 23andMe specifically. Um, Risks and laws related to 23andMe. Laws pretty easy. They fall under the FDA because of medical devices, something they fought pretty heavily in the beginning, but good luck beating the FDA. And of course, they fall under HIPAA due to the exchanging the PHI, or even holding the PHI at all. So security risks, they're numerous. Anything that we went through in security, as far as all those terms go, they all kind of apply here, as well as the cybersecurity. So not just the attacks, but also just general loss of data. A big one that I like to mention is ownership or agency. So that implies that you lose, potentially are losing this element of controlling or limiting where that information is. Once you put it on the web, you got to think about it as potentially compromised, with anything you put on the internet these days. So something like your entire genomic sequencing is that's a lot of information, and that's not to say that that's what's even accessible from their website, but there's quite a bit of information which it could be potentially um, taken out of your hands. And I say potentially, but no, they reserve the right to use that to develop new drugs and whatnot. So new products to sell. So um, another security risk here: a loss of data access due to financial limitations or companies ceasing operations. And that's one that I added, just off the top of my head, just as somebody who's purchased subscription-based software in the past. Or any kind of software. If you're accessing anything over a network, you need to consider the idea that that company may just go belly up eventually, and uh, they may end up not hosting those servers any longer. So if you haven't downloaded that information, you may lose it entirely. And the other risk, I put here was the financial limitations restricting your access. And it's more or less the idea that you've got to maintain the subscription in order to maintain the service. The next one is a loss of confidentiality due to a data breach. That's a major risk. And then the last one I've got here is just a violation of privacy. Say, following that data breach, if that information gets published, you're having your personal health information out there. It definitely is a violation of privacy. So, what's the data security reality? These are just kind of the risks that you're facing using it. So now we're kind of moving towards what's the reality. And I discovered doing a little bit of this research right off the bat that they actually ship to quite a few places, which is interesting. However, it looks like the way that they get through it is they say that you've got to be a U.S. citizen. So you can't just because they ship to the United Kingdom doesn't necessarily mean that as a citizen of the United Kingdom you could use the service. So there's a lot of little caveats here. So, but the fact that they're shipping medical devices to these places and allowing you to access the results on the internet, um, subject them to some other laws and regulations following those countries there, which I didn't go into detail. I just wanted to kind of list the fact that this is actually a rather large company that does comply with quite a few international standards and laws, just in order to service Americans internationally. Um, so, data theft from 23andMe. We've had an incident, and it was really bad. It resulted in untold damages to consumers, as the data pools that were released were actually classified by race, which kind of terrified some people. And you could buy a list of X number of people for of whatever race you were looking for, genetically identified race, and then along with that, each one of those individuals, many of them actually had location data attached, or excuse me, or they had access to this other portion of their profile, I guess, where they had family trees, which actually stated the genetic information of relatives, how much similar DNA of that race that relative may have had, which resulted in a lot of exposures. We're looking at 7 million, nearly 7 million people's data um, being hacked in December of 2023. And what did 23andMe do? Well, they blamed the users. They said, well, it's because they had old passwords that had been compromised. And yeah, it was. I just thought it was kind of funny. This reporter quoted somebody essentially saying it was a very dumb move, for them to blame the users. Which, as a company, blaming your customers for a major security leak is just not a good sight. It's not very sightly. It's not good form. However, I wouldn't say they're completely incorrect, just due to the fact that it was a lot of what was taken was taken through customer accounts using the customer's own passwords. So something to do with like that, though, you got to say, okay, so the company had something wrong with its password policies. If this many compromised passwords were able to, get in and get this much information. Um, I already kind of covered it, but some of the information included family trees, and then it also includes birth years along with geographic locations. So um, that made the stock price tank. They were actually doing pretty well, and now it almost looks like it's about to be delisted from the Nasdaq as a publicly traded company. Um, Kind of a big deal there. Speaks to their desperation and the loss of trust, loss of public trust. Um, I didn't include it in the slide here, but there's something to the tune of it. I think 15 million or so people who currently are subscribed to the service. So um, it's a lot of people, but I just can't say. It doesn't seem like they're doing well. Uh, some the investors are all scared, so that's a sign. Anyway, um, a lot of the scary part of this again was the fact they were sorted by race. Some of them were actually marketed as here's a list of Jewish people, and here's a list of or people with Jewish DNA or people with Chinese DNA, and so it's quite a scary thought that somebody with bad intentions could go on there and actually get the home addresses of a bunch of people of a certain race. It just does not sit well. It's kind of a terrifying idea that that's how they were being sold. Um, you got to wonder like what's the profit motive, and it's again just kind of scary stuff. So um, here's kind of where I pointed that bit about the it, it was the result of the user's passwords actually themselves becoming compromised. So you got to think like some of the older passwords that you've got. Uh, on certain websites you might not have been on in a while are potentially keys for bad people to get in and get information on for about you and your loved ones. So kind of scary that that door exists and that it's more or less exists by necessity because we've got to have passwords to get into our accounts, and we're gonna have they're gonna get compromised in other places and then be usable there. However, the fact is that less than they say 0.1% of users were compromised. Um, Means it wasn't that bad. It actually was, in the scheme of things. If you say how many people is this, it's a lot of people. 7 million people. That's a lot of people. Um, Being less than 0.1%. So 99.9 or 99% rather of the users. Yeah, no, 99.9% of the users didn't have a problem. So if you look at that statistic from the other way around, it actually is it's a little empowering. You got to say, wow, their security actually must be fairly good if this is the only way people got in. And then when they got in and they got that information, uh, it was really uh, not a massive data breach as far as basically means it could have been far worse. Which is a scary thought. We got to wonder what would have happened if these bad actors had held off and collected more of those passwords before launching an attack. How many could they have gotten? So, um, is it worth it? This is kind of the last question I wanted to dwell on or focus on here before I wrapped it up. And ultimately, we've all got our own risk profiles. So, I just wanted to end it here with a bit from the legal, you know, the the user agreement. When you purchase the product, um, and it says down here that you understand that by providing any sample, having your information processed, accessing your information, or providing information, you acquire no rights in any research or commercial products that may be developed by 23andMe or its collaborators. You specifically understand that you will not receive compensation for any research or commercial products that include or result from your information. So even if you give them the keys to the kingdom, and they actually are, your DNA leaps their research ahead and has a direct resulting product. um, you specifically understand you will not receive any compensation. So you're not going to be named in it. You're not going to be, entitled to any of the financial compensation, you're going to be excluded entirely from that. So you won't even know. Um, I just think that kind of sucks. Excuse my language. It's just kind of underhanded. You've got a massive company like this making all this money, taking so much money from people, and essentially saying, if we use your DNA, if we get your DNA information and it, changes modern science for the better, you're, you know, you're not even gonna be mentioned. That's just kind of, yeah, just why, why can't we give people credit where it's due? Say thank you at least. Um, in conclusion, I just wanted to say that 23andMe generates a lot of data regarding your genetic profile, more than they offer you with the lower packages. It costs a lot of money to access most of the information. So if you wanted everything, it's $1,000 upfront, 500 a year after that. And the data security risk produced by generating this data at all, even if you're not logging on and looking at it, once it's generated, it's accessible, and all these risks become present. So you've got anywhere essentially from a enormous worst case scenario risk to whatever kind of point oh one or 0.1% risk, depending on how you view your personal privacy, your data privacy, and that potential of exposing others to risk. Um, Data security is complicated. It's not easy. There's a lot to it, and there's always going to be vulnerabilities. As long as there's a financial motivation to getting this information, and if there's people out there willing to buy it, we're going to have criminals trying to take it and sell it, just like anything else. Quality information is expensive, and these expenses result in access limitations and lagging security updates for people who have, imagine people with older computers or less financial means. They might not necessarily be able to have, the latest and greatest, which is able to benefit from, these newer, better security features. And I'm thinking right now things like, for example, um, my phone's got a facial identification on it. So because I sprung for a newer iPhone now, I can unlock it with my face, and by having that, I've got access to a facial recognition system, which can again trickles down through all of my security features. So um, that costs money, and then kind of the last elements here is that. They can use your information and genetic data to produce medical breakthroughs, but you will not receive any credit at all for your contribution. You might be able to see something on the dashboard if it's something that they, include in their report to you. Um, if it's, built into their system already, but they're not going to go give you a custom award for, having the greatest DNA that just cured cancer or whatever. Um, so ultimately you take on all the risk. You're the one flipping the coin here. They're going to win either way. If they lose the data, they'll pay the fine, whatever. It's been profitable for them. You're the one that ends up compromised. So you basically are generating this data for this platform in hopes that maybe you discover you've got a disease or something that you could prevent or something. But again, their terms say don't, this isn't for medical advice, so don't treat it like that. So ultimately, it almost kind of feels like you're just better off going to your doctor's office and asking for a genetic review or something like that. I truly feel like these platforms kind of prey on people with clever marketing, and they're able to kind of separate this idea that your doctor is there to help. So I recommend everybody, if you're thinking about doing this, you probably talk to your doctor about it first, and see if there's a local option. See if there's something that you can do in a setting where you get good quality care, good quality feedback, and you get the benefits of not necessarily having a publicly traded company trying to profit off of you like that, unless of course you go to a publicly traded healthcare institution. Anyways, that's what I've got. Got a list of references at the end here. Feel free to look at them if you'd like. And of course, I had to list our cool dude in the shades, the one spark of excitement in here. So, anyways, thank you very much for listening to my health tech project, and